that it is usually waterlogged, the plants there need to have something called breathing roots in order to survive. And some plants have what we call the prop root. So don't just think about, oh, I know about every animal. There are some specific fishes that are found in those environments. You don't expect to see shark now in some water environments, but you see shark majorly in ocean. Even tilapia fish is a common example. You commonly see tilapia fish in fresh water, not in marine. So all of these things, you have to get used to them. So like some of the crustaceans too that you have, you also have to be specific. The type of snail you have, the type of plants you have in a specific environment. They can give you different food chain. Like I told you when we were doing food chain, they can give you different food chain and ask you that which of the food chain is specific for marine, for freshwater, for estuaries. So if you are not sure of the type of animals or plants you have around that habitat, it will be difficult for you to determine the food chain, and you might make mistakes because they all look similar. So all of these things are the things you have to be careful of when you are studying. So looking at habitat, we said habitat is the natural dwelling place of an organism, Abi. And being the natural dwelling place, most organisms in all those habitats, they need to develop different attributes, different characteristics that will help them to survive in a particular habitat. So when you're talking about habitats, I told you the last time that we have two types of habitats majorly. We have what we call the terrestrial habitat, Abi. Then we also have what we call the aquatic habitat. Now, there are some examples I'm here to give you under biomes, like the type of plants in savanna, Abi. So before we are through today, I will try and give you all of those ones again. I said you should do it as assignment, but I will give it to you today. So for terrestrial habitats, all of you know what terrestrial means. The land dwelling part, Abi, for the organisms. Now, when you're talking about terrestrial habitats, we still have different types of terrestrial habitats, which are the things you need to know. I've talked about this, like the marsh or the marshes. That is still just like talking about your swamp. An environment where I told you that we are going to have some characteristics like waterlogged environments, because we are going to be having consistent rain, and that place is always full of water and marshy. We have talked about it before. So terrestrial is still more like focusing on your biomes, all those things we have talked about before. So if you're talking about the type of plants here, we said most of the plants have broad leaves. Do you still remember? They have broad leaves, so they grow very well. And most of the plants that you have there, they are usually floating plants. They are floating plants. And they can ask you, what makes a plant to float in an aquatic environment? There is what is called air bladder. So air bladder makes them to float in an aquatic environment. I just want to, sometimes I brought a note to give you, but sometimes I find it hard to use notes because there are some things you need to know. If I start dictating, we will not even finish some of these things. But let's just talk about all the important things we need to note. Then if I say any other thing that I personally, biology is not something that you have to read and read and read, because it's more of like cram me some things. You are not so used to it. So you have to, it's unlike chemistry, it's unlike physics that you have to express yourself. In physics now, the moment you understand principles, you can start applying and solving questions. But in biology, there are statements you have to always watch out for. You don't just assume that you know it. You have to, when they ask you a question, you must be sure of what that part is really talking about. If they ask you now that what type of plants do you have in desert, a lot of you are used to one type of plants in particular that you have in desert, and you don't want to start thinking, but how many plants do you want to keep in your brain? Do you know the number of plants you have in desert? Do you know the number of plants you have in tropical rainforests? The number of plants you have in savannas? So that's why when you are studying biology, be meticulous, be careful. The reason you see students, and I think I worked on that last year, and I was just thinking about it, that how would these students, because I've seen students score 98 in chemistry, 98 in physics, 100 in all of those subjects, but when it comes to biology, we barely see people score above 80. And I think last year we had people that scored above 90. That last year, Abi. So if you are not careful about biology, many of us used to feel like we know biology. And it's because all of us can read it on our own. And that's one of the things. That's why many of you still feel English. You are not studying English. You just feel like, I know English. It's a feeling, whereas you don't know it. By the time they give you some rules and some principles in English, you will know yourself that you don't know English. So that's why you see people not scoring 90 something. But that chemistry that seems like L on the Kinikon that you cannot read on your own. Many of you are running from mathematics now because you feel like you can't read maths on your own. Biology, you can read it on your own. Whereas biology is more dangerous. English is more dangerous than all of those subjects. I hope you are getting my point. If you see someone that is very good to teach you maths, teach you chemistry, teach you physics, you can score everything. But even if someone teaches you biology very well and you don't do some reading over and over, you will forget some things. And at the end of the day, biology is very, very wide. So please, let's be careful. If you want to score very high in your JAMB, don't joke with your English and biology. Don't see it. I know you will do well, but don't joke with biology. Don't assume too much that I know it. Understand your rules, the principles in English, apply them. Read your biology over and over. Get used to some common terms and apply them. The last JAMB I did, biology was my highest. So I was wondering, but I had that mind that what is wrong with this biology? And I worked on it. So please work very hard. So floating plants, we have air bladder that makes plants to float on water. Now, I also said something, the type of plants we have around the marsh. I don't want to spend time here. We've talked about most of it under biomes, but I just want to brief you again. The parts I really want to spend time is on aquatic and how we can quickly do it to understand it. So I told you that we have white mangrove. What are that white mangrove to the environment? Then we have the red mangrove. So you have to know the difference. What are that the red mangrove? So they have what we call the prop roots, Abi. And I told you that prop roots and silt roots, they are kind of what we call buttress roots, Abi, because they majorly give support to the plant so that the plant can stand very well. I'm going to ask you all questions. So those of you sleeping, be ready for my questions. So you also have, when you move from the marsh, the swamp, please, as much as possible, even if it is from, I want you to check modern biology. Examples of plants in marsh. Check for examples of plants in marsh and check for examples of animals in marsh. Then, when you have checked for them, form a food chain. Form a food chain. Determine the primary, the secondary, and all of those things we've talked about. So you form a food chain. I want us to be specific and not just give random examples, especially from your modern biology. That's your recommended book. There are a lot of books recommended, but at least take notes. So the second one we talked about was your forests, Abi. So forests. Forest is where you have different plants, communities of plants. Abi, in forest you have communities of plants. And I told you that in that forest, we have several tall plants. Those plants are leafy, they are tall, and we said it that there is very high rainfall, Abi, high rainfall in forests. And due to this high rainfall, plants are able to grow very well. Now, when you go to forest, you see that the plants exist in layers. Plants exist in layers from what we have talked about. And that layers of plants, we call it strata. Strata. So you have different layers of plants. They usually ask questions around here. And I told you about those different stratas in the last class, Abi. I told you about the emergence, the canopy, the middle layer, Abi, the shrubs, and the grasses. Right? I hope you still remember them. So I told you about the different 5 layers we have in the forests. And one of the things you need to know about, maybe let me use another random talk for that. For the forests, we have 3 types of forests majorly. The one we have in Nigeria, local biomes that we talked about the last time, was the tropical rainforest. So we have the tropical rainforest, we have the temperate forests, and we have the types of forests: temperate forests, the tropical forests, and the what? And the coniferous. From their names, you will know. This tropical is where you have all those evergreen plants, the plants that grows in strata, all the ones we talked about the last time. Now, they usually have a very big leaf. For the temperates, you will see plants that will be cold, like icy, in a very cold environment. So most of the plants around here, they are usually in cold environments. And most of those plants are deciduous. You know, I talked about everything all together the last time. Deciduous plants. So these are plants that drop their leaves every year. So they drop their leaves, they shed their leaves. So, but coniferous, if you want to see the tallest tree in the world, in a forest, you go from the word conifer, like conifer, from all these gymnosperms. So you have the coniferous, those are the very tall trees. So in this forest, you have very tall trees. There's also a part called this tundra. I think they asked that in the last mock. This place, there's no tree. I'm going to talk about that, but I don't want to categorize it under this place. Just know this, that there's an environment that the plants there are no trees. It is said to be treeless environment. Do you get that? And they asked last year in the mock, during the mock. So now, just note this difference. I've talked about the plants, the type of plants you have in forest, Abi. So we talked about, what's that one called? Beche, mahogany, Abi, Iroko trees, and all of those stuff. Then, when you leave forests, you move to the savanna, Abi. And I told you that savanna is also called grassland. Now, note something here, because they can ask you some of these characteristics. Most top plants in forests, they used to have what we call thin bark. You know, in savanna, I told you they have thick bark. Abi, what's the purpose of the thick bark? So these ones have thin bark, and the thin bark helps them to at least carry out transpiration because they have enough water. So both the bark and the leaves, they use it to carry out transpiration at high rates. And you don't always have fire outbreak like that compared to the savanna. So in the savanna, most plants in the savanna want to survive that high temperature, then that fire outbreak that can just happen. And that's why they have thick bark. Another thing you need to know about most plants in forests, they need support because they will grow very tall. And when they grow very tall, then they will need support to stand well. So the support they use is usually called, and you have numerous grasses. Now, please note something. Please note something. Don't forget, just like I said here, the same thing I said you should do for marsh. Do it for, I want you to get used to those plants and animals. Do it for forest, do it for savanna. I've given you some examples, Abi. So you expect to have most of those predators around the savanna. So most animals will be pursuing themselves. So you have predator-prey, a lot of predator-prey relationships around the savanna. So form a food chain around the savanna. Is that taken? So you have scattered trees and you have numerous grasses around the savanna. And we said something that you need to always remember. There's thick bark. Abi, there's thick bark in order to withstand fire. So there's thick bark. Then what else did I talk about the last time? What else can you remember? So if you don't expect them to actually grow a very big leaf. So most times they need water and they have to, and their rainfall and temperature and all of those things, you can talk about them as you are moving out. So then we also have a part, we actually have what we call the mountain forests. Let me pass this. What is it? Yes, dry season, since there is no water. Now, deep succulent. If you want to have thick, what is it called? Thick succulent stem. Which environments should have thick succulent stem? Sunken stomata. Have you heard about sunken stomata? You have talked about adaptation now. So in the desert, most of the plants in the desert, they have sunken stomata. Now, if you want to reduce the rate of transpiration, their leaves must become very small, tiny, so that they don't continue to lose water. I usually have that around the desert. Is that taken? All of these are things you would have talked about under adaptation. So there are plants like that, and most plants and animals, they find a way to adapt. Did you talk about camel during adaptation? Eh? How many of you were in class? How does you usually have camel around the desert, Abi? How does camel adapt? Changing color. Camel must store water. So they have a very long, what's it called? This urinary tracts that we have. You know, have you done excretion? Not yet. We have what we call long urinary tracts, so that it helps them to absorb water. And when they drink water, they can drink gallons of water. That water that they have drank will sustain them for several days in the desert, even if they do not see water. So all of those things are what adapts them. You are still going to talk about excretion, so you understand how your urinary tube will work by water reabsorption and all of those things. So don't worry. Now, okay, you shall heard about cacti in deserts. How does cactus survive? The leaf in cactus will grow to spine, abi, will grow to thorns. The leaves in cactus, they grow to thorns, so they are not broad leaves. So they have to go to something tiny, tiny, so that they don't lose water too much. So most of these plants, they survive in deserts by having what we call sunken stomata. And leaves developed to thorns. So please, all these are common things you have to take notes for terrestrial habitats especially. So, but for, make sure you know the plants, the examples of the plants and the examples of the animals. When I'm setting your mock, I'll make sure I use most of those examples, because I saw a lot of questions on that last year, that JAMB asked last year. So, kò jẹ́ kí o máa tẹ́tí ẹ̀ kó máa gbọ́. So, but the purpose of today is on aquatic habitat. So when you're talking about aquatic habitat, you're actually talking about the water environment, Abi. So organisms that live in water. I talked about Arboreal too. During adaptation, did you talk about adaptation of Arboreal organisms? Adaptation is a different topic. Habitat is a different thing, but most of them go together. What adapts a plant to a particular habitat, you need to know. What adapts an animal to a particular habitat, you need to know. And that's why you did adaptation the last time. But many of you will not read. It is no, 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 you'll be saying. You are talking about the water environment. And for aquatic, you have what we call the ocean, Abi, or marine water. Who are you students? What are the types of ocean we have? And what's the largest ocean? You have ocean, the marine water, you have the freshwater habitats, Abi. You have Atlantic Ocean, you have Pacific Ocean. Then you have the brackish or estuaries. Now, these are the three major types of aquatic habitats you have. Some animals live in marine habitat, and that's the largest, the marine habitat. Some animals live in freshwater habitat, while some live in brackish or estuaries. There are different types of freshwater, there are different types of brackish, there are different types of oceans. Now, for what differentiates the three of them is talking about salt, Abi, salinity, presence of salt. Which one contains more salt? I don't expect to be asking you this and you will not know or answer me. These are basic knowledge. Shello Secondary School, Rarabai. Which one has the highest form of salinity? You know, presence of salt is called salinity, Abi. So which one has the highest salinity? Marine. So this one has high salinity. The salt concentration is high. So they have high salt concentration. For fresh water, they have low or even no salt concentration, depending on the fresh water you are talking about. They have low or no Now, for brackish, brackish is a mixture of marine, so you form brackish from marine and fresh water. So when fresh water meets marine water, then they have what we call brackish or estuaries. Is that taken? So which means that the salt concentration for this will depend on the amount of fresh water or the amount of marine that mix together. That's why you can say that for brackish, the salinity vary. The salinity varies. So it depends on which one. If you have more ocean than fresh water, more ocean water than fresh water mixed together, then there will be high salinity. I mean, if you have more fresh water then there will be low salinity. So the salinity varies depending on which is which. I hope you are following. And all of this determine the type of animals and the type of plants. That's my only assignment for you to please do for me before I set tests for you. So I can't see all my textbooks again. I don't know where everything disappeared to. I know. There are some people in this class that I can ask. Wura, you are part of them. I did not want to mention name, but you want to dárúkọ Wura ẹ̀ ṣe ta ló dárúkọ Wura? Ó jí gbogbo ìwé mi tán. Samuel ó wà lára wọn. My biology textbook that used to be this tall, I can't see anything again. Dr. Ben, it was Ben that took everything out. Wura, comprehensive biology, níbo ló wà? Wura, ó wà lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀. College biology, ó wà lọ́wọ́ mo mọ̀ ó lè má jẹ́ ló gbé modern. Samuel, modern biology, ó wà lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀. Mi fẹ́ dárúkọ yín bọ̀ àwọn tó mọ̀ ìtàn ti dárúkọ yín, well done. Get that padà immediately after my class. So please just go and check for those animals and those plants that you can have as the examples. So you also have, what was I saying? Now, for this, although you have the different types, but note something. When you're talking about this marine and fresh water, we usually talk about some zones. The zones we talk about it in two ways. Number one, in an ocean will be very deep, Abby. And if you draw, I think I have my diagram there, but let me just give you the things I can still remember in my brain. When you're talking about the depth of an ocean, how deep it is, then we break, based on that depth, we have different types of zones based on depth. Then, how can we remember this? We have splash zone, we have the neritic zone, we have the littoral zone, we have the benthic zone, we have the abysmal zone, and we have the adal. So let me give you something. Just think about the people that Elijah called fire on. Do you remember? But change the valve L to H. So no lights in bar. That will help you to remember all the zones based on depths. The shallowest of them is the splash zone. Although splash zone have different names. I'll try and give you all the names, all the different other names. But let's know this first before the other names. I said, so no lights in bar. That will help you to remember the different zones based on depth for a marine habitat. So for a marine habitat, we have the first zone. There's a space around here where if you stand there, water can always splash and go back. So we usually call that area the splash zone. The splash zone, where water waves used to move and come and go back and all of those things. Then we have a part that is not that deep that we call intertidal zone and all of those things. So we have the different zones. I will list them. So let's write them. Then after splash, we have what we call the neritic zone. Neritic zone, based on depths. Then after that, we have what we call the littoral zone. Then we have what we call the benthic zone. We have what we call the abysmal zone. And we have what we call the other zone. So which one of them is the deepest? Which one is the deepest? Other, based on their depths. This littoral zone is just around 200 meters. Anything around 500 meters, that's benthic zone. Then around 7,000 meters, that is abysmal zone. Then anything greater than 7,000, that is the other zone. Talking about their depths, like Goshe Deep Sea. So, but this say no lights is actually the area with lights in the ocean. So we have, based on depths, we have those three types. Then based on lights, we still have zone. Based on can lights get there? What type of animals do you have there? Then we have three types of zones again. Those ones are EDA, EDA. Based on lights, we have the euphotic zone, or simply put, photic. Eu usually means true. That means it's an area where you see lights. That's the top part of it. So we call it euphotic zone. Then we have another one called dysphotic zone. Dysphotic zone. Around euphotic zone, you have a lot of producers. Please, I'm giving you a kind of summary under all of these things. If I start giving you notes, it will take much time. But what I'm giving you now will help us. Then we have a photic zone. From the word A, light can still get to this photic. It's just that the light can vary. It can manage to get there, and sometimes light will not get there. So we have three types of zones based on light penetration. Is that taken? Based on light penetration. The place where you usually have light is called what? They will ask you. They asked Ben during his own JAMB. They will ask you all of these zones. So don't listen. So the place where you usually have light is usually called euphotic zone. The place where you can have light maybe partially or no light at all. Sometimes we have what we call the dysphotic zone. So the highest form of producer will be found around which of these zones? Euphotic. They might not even now tell you producers. They might just put phytoplankton, zooplankton, nectin, and all of those things. I'll tell you the type of animals we also have there based on their movement. So you have what we call euphotic zone. That's where light usually get to. Abi, we have the dysphotic zone, and we have what we call the aphotic zone. So the aphotic zone is where there is no light at all. That one is the deepest part, and it's dark. So you usually have consumers and decomposers around here majorly. You can have consumers here too. Are you following? So based on depth, how many zones do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So based on depth, and the deepest part is other zone. That means that I can relate other zone to aphotic zone, Abi, because other zone you don't expect light to be there. Even where light gets to is actually around that littoral zone. From benthic zone, you usually don't have light. Do you get that? So this part now is usually where you have your light. This part usually do not have light. And we still differentiate it into two actually. All these three parts, they are generally called the littoral zone. These parts are usually called the benthic zone. So you have lights around here, but usually you have no lights around here. So that's talking about the different zones. So some of you do not have what's it called? What's it called? You are not on the group, right? I've added some of you, but I've not. I think I've not really had much time to reply some of you. But I've added those of you that have messaged me. But I'm thinking I should just. I just wish, because I wish the book has been ready, so that I'll just come and explain, then you go and check that book that I've been working on, so it will be easier. But if you had listened to me, actually, I'm not sure there's question they want to ask you that you have not had. You have not had, except that you are just making everything boring to yourself. So now the next one, there's what we call continental shelf too, and no, I will come and give you that. Now, if they ask you for the two types of zones you have for fresh water, just give them littoral and benthic zone. The two types of zone for fresh water, you have the littoral and benthic zone. Now, what other thing do you need to know is the type of animals you have. They asked that last year too. Types of animals you have. That's why if you see me follow up JAMB every time, I used to want to know the questions they keep asking, then the updates on everything. And it's one of the reasons you should do well, because you can walk around all those zones. And if you know where to walk, you have the right information, you will do well. You will do well. So we have, based on movements of organisms on the water, then we have two major types. We have what we call the planktons and the nectons. So if you, in an ocean, so based on the types of organisms and the movements of those organisms, there are some organisms that are slow or even stagnant. So they don't really move so fast inside the water. Water can be carrying some of them up and down, but they remain on the water, only move based on the water current. We usually call them planktons. Planktons. These planktons are of two types. If it is plants, I told you the last time, we call them what? Phytoplanktons. And examples are your diatoms, Abi. You remember? Someone was asking that, see, ocean, Abi, what's it called? What's that question again? Your bar beach, is it an ocean or a fresh water? Bar beach, is it an ocean or a fresh water? Do you know the amount of salt that is present there? It will be an extension of ocean. Is that taken? So it's not a fresh water. You can't categorize. Fresh water can neither be stagnant like your streams, your rivers, your ponds, your lakes. All those ones are your fresh water. But Babish will still be categorized as an ocean. Is that taken? So you have the phytoplanktons, diatoms, you have all this, your dinoflagellates, Abby, dinoflagellates, and they have what, and you have what they use to survive. We have sargassum. All these are examples of phytoplanktons. Then you have zooplanktons. Zooplanktons are those small animals that you have in the ocean. Most of your crustaceans, barnacles. Can you give me some examples that I wrote there on zooplanktons? So the ones that are slow moving, they can ask you, but this was the one they asked last year. They asked about the ones that are fast moving. That's the one they asked last year. They didn't ask the ones that are slow moving. So now they can ask you any of it. Do you have the? So examples of zooplanktons are periwinkles, starfish, some mollusks, worms, most protozoans, you have most crustaceans. So they are said to be zooplankton. You will give me that of nectin soon. So some animals are fast moving. They move very fast on the water. So they swim very fast inside the water. So we call them fast moving animals, and those ones are called nectins. Nectins. Is that taken? That was what they asked last year. So in the option, you have phytoplankton, you have zooplankton, you have nectins, and so on. So your answer would be nectins, the ones that move actively in water. They are very, very sharp, so they move very fast. So examples of fast moving animals. Most fishes, squids, crabs, whales, prawn, sharks, dogfish. So there are a lot of them, but at least from some of the textbooks that I've read, some of them gathered, and they can ask you to give examples of the ones that, or you ask to form a food chain between them. Please, let's get used to those. Just go and look for those examples for me, please. Examples of plants, animals, and all of those things. It's going to take my time. So those are the things you need to know about the ocean. Are you there? So we have two types of fresh water too, based on the motion of the water. Your fresh water that is stagnant, we call it lentic. So we have the lentic fresh water and we have the lotic fresh water. Sometimes the word lotic used to want to sound like the one that is actually stagnant, while the word lentic used to want to sound like the ones that is actually flowing. No, don't mix it together. So lotic is the one that is flowing, fast moving. Are you through with the board? Oh yeah, you are right. Let me see if there's anything. I can't even snap my notes. Oh, lady, you can't really see. Are you through? I'm almost through, so there's nothing much. It's just the animals that I'm concerned about. So when I'm through, then I will now talk about what else? Population study, soil. I'll talk about population study, then I'll talk about soil and all that has to do with it. Then we'll be through with ecology. I think we can talk about that tomorrow. So then we'll be through with ecology. Then some part of conservation that you need to know. Then we'll be through with that tomorrow. So that I can quickly go to some parts of systems that you have not done. Then by next week, God helping us, we should be through with biology. Then by March, you can now start over again, but in a summarized form. In a summarized form. Then by April, please, Samuel and co. April should be for questions. All true. Every time everybody comes. So questions only. All true. So by March, we'll find a way to summarize the rest of the syllabus. To just go over it again, like marathon class. Just important things we need to note, not really the classes. Then after that, by April, everybody should start solving questions. I think there's this thing there's JAMB Abby by April or March. By March. So the rest of you that were unable to register for mock, we'll gather questions for you. But before the mock, you are going to write 200 questions. So every year we used to do that. When you are going for your mock exam, we'll write 200 questions. So the 200 questions will help us to cover the entire syllabus. So you practice them, you solve them. If you can answer those 200 questions well, then you can go for your mock and be rest assured. Then before your main exam too, you will do 200 questions. We used to do it for like 4 days before our exam. So keep preparing, keep getting better, keep using your brain. I don't think there's anything that I've not even talked about. So another name for splash zone is supertidal, supratidal, surface, photic, epipelagic zone. You can see, that's why I just wanted us to at least know this one first. So we have another name that they call this splash zone. It is called supertidal. It is also called supratidal. It is also called epipelagic. It is also called kiloshele. It is also called photic zone. And it can also be called surface zone. So all those other names for splash zones. In case you see it in your option, you will know which one to pick. Then the neritic zone, another name for it is intertidal. Intertidal. Neritic is also known as intertidal. Neritic or intertidal. Also called intertidal zone. Then we also have the littoral zone, also known as subtidal or twilight zone. How many of you have watched Twilight before? Have you watched Twilight? Báwo biology ṣe fẹ́ yẹ? I'm joking. No? So I said littoral zone is also called what? It's also called subtidal. Subtidal, and is also called twilight zone. Ṣé tó ń rànjú wọn mi kí mo ṣe fún ẹ? Are you there? So benthic zone is also known as midnight zone. Midnight zone, Oganjo Oru zone. Then Abiza zone. Shabizma Mokod. This is Abiza. Abiza zone is also known as pelagic zone. Is also known as pelagic zone. Pelagic is also known as pelagic zone. Then other zone is also known as aphotic zone. Aphotic. Are you there? Ada is also known as aphotic, like aphotic, like no light. Aphotic zone. Ada is also known as aphotic zone. So I told you something that there's what we call oceanic water, neritic water. Write this. The region with shallow water, that is neritic water, the region with shallow water. The region with shallow water, that's neritic water, is called continental shelf. This place is called continental shelf. Continental shelf. Yes. That's where you have a part of the water that is very deep. This part of the water that is very deep is called oceanic water. Oceanic water. The part that is shallow, that is very shallow, we call it neritic water. So the shallow part is called neritic water, while the deep part is called the oceanic water. The region with deep water is called the oceanic water, and that is called continental slope. So from year to year, it's called continental slope. So this place is called continental shelf. So the first layer, this is the shallow part. This first part is called the intertidal zone. Intertidal zone. All these ones I'm just adding to the things I've told you before. Then you have this part where continental shelf end. So you have subtidal zone. Subtidal zone. And subtidal is your littoral. That's your littoral. So that's around your 200 meter. That is deep. Then you now have the next one. You have the next one. Then you have the next one. And the ones above 7,000. So, but from this place to the 200 is where you have your, around this area will be your euphotic zone, where you have lights. Then from here to here will be your dysphotic zone. Then the rest will be your aphotic zone. So this area will be your splash zone. Am I giving you the two types of fresh water? What are the two types? A lot of people have not written that too. So we have two types of fresh water. Let me just quickly help you to write that because of people that have not written it. Wetland under the terrestrial now. That's a transition from, yes, now still the terrestrial. After the grassland, you have the forest, you have the wetland under freshwater. Transition, wetland. I think I wrote wetland there. Hey, Sean, let me see that part of the notes. I saw that the stage I neglected wetland. Did you check the characteristics of wetland? You didn't check. I saw it, but I've neglected it at a point. But the two major types, based on how the water flows, is your lentic and the lotic. So for the wetland, it can, are you sure it's not the splash parts of the zone? Out weeded. Saturated with water. So that means if we are going to categorize it, it will be like you just have minor water in such environment. There's water that flows, there's water that is stagnant, then there's water that is just being, so the wind just take water to such environment. I think that's just the difference. Let's check. Oh yeah. So for the fresh water, we have lentic. So lentic fresh water is where you have stagnant water. Stagnant water. The water is not really flowing. There are still different types of these guys. And that example is your ponds, Abi. Your ponds, your lakes. So where you have stagnant water. Then you have lotic. Lotic is where your water flows. Where water flows, examples are your rivers and streams. So another one given to me now is wetland. So you can add that to just know more about it. But I would say that maybe from the word wetland, yeah, the water in this place now, they continue to stream, Abi, they continue to move. The water in this place, they remain in a position, stagnant. But probably the area around fresh water, where you have water being deposited a whole lot of times, can be your wetland. But from the definition she read, she said area with saturated water. And water can saturate a particular environment based on the water vapor that is being dropped in such environment. So you can have the three types. So please, one of the things that is important is the plants and animals. Please help me to check. I've given you some examples, but I just want you to add it from your own textbooks. I don't have books again, so please check. I mean, the Lomara modern biology. Me too, the atlas, modern biology. So please check. Just check for those examples. Me too, I'm looking for money to buy my own textbook, not modern biology. It's Atlas I want to buy. Atlas 30-something thousand. So I bought several modern biology. It has been carried away. Don't let me say stolen. So are we done? Oh yeah, let's try and solve questions on everything. Now, the book I am doing, I'm also categorizing them topic by topic. Just this way. All of those questions, everything. I just wish there is enough time. There's no time. I want to gather chakra. Oh yeah, bring out, what's the time? 11? Time will you catch it? 11:30, we catch it. Oh yeah, pass questions in 9 minutes. Oh yeah, ASAP. So let's continue chemistry while they are. Oh yeah, pass questions now. Oh yeah. Before they settle down, Katisari saw pass questions there. So we have done ecological concepts. Gbogbo ẹ̀ náà ojú kan ló wà. Wọ́n fi pépà ṣe yín. Ẹ̀tẹ̀ lówó fún yàn. Kíkan ní tẹ̀ pass owó lọ́jọ́ kan. Ṣeun náà ni. Wọ́n á dá wọn ló bọ̀ pépà ó máa sá dédé wájú. So everybody just answer me. I will quickly dictate the question while the chemistry students settle down. So they should remove that board. Oh, what does nitrifying bacteria do?
Convert ammonium salt to nitrate.
You remember? Yes. So the one that will convert ammonium to nitrite, what's the name? Nitrosomonas. Why the one that will convert nitrite to nitrate? Number 2, the study of the organism and the environment of an abandoned farmland is the ecology of what? That is an ecosystem. Anytime you are talking about the organism and its environment, you are dealing with ecosystem. But if you are just talking about different organisms interacting, you are talking about community. But if you are talking about the same species of organism interacting, you are talking about population. So you should know the difference. Number 3, in the food chain above, the secondary consumer is what? Those of you that said insects, clap for yourself. Are you going to put soil as part of them? No. They are not using soil to confuse you. So you have soil, you have grass. Grass are what now? Producers. So your primary consumer will be what? Insects. Your secondary consumer will be what? Do you understand that? Don't make that mistake again. So your answer is what? Cold. Number 4, the complex relationship between the number of community and the community as a whole and the environment is what? Micro. That's ecosystem. Community and environment. The relationship. Is that taken? Number 5, a second disk is used to determine what? Turbidity. Number 6, bacteria inhabiting the legume roots nodule and which add and reference nitrogen to the soil are known as what? They are the nitrogen fixing bacteria. They are different from nitrifying bacteria. What do? They convert atmospheric nitrogen to ammonium salts. You can answer number 7. You can answer number 8. You can answer number 9. You can answer number 10. What's the answer to number 10? They combine oxygen and nitrogen. So it is likely that we have to break the nitrogen. And that will break, I think the reaction, if I can still remember, is N2 will break to N plus N. O2 will break to O plus O. And at the end, N plus O will react together to form NO. Then NO will react with small O2 to form NO2. Then the NO2 will react with H2O to form HNO3 or HNO2. So at the end of the day, you are going to have nitrites and you're also going to have nitrates. So that is the job of what? Lightning. Is that taking? So the answer is option A. Are you there? By now you should have solved all of these questions. I don't even expect you. So if there's anyone confusing you, we can talk about it. So, but there are 90 questions here. So you have settled down for your chemistry, please. Let's continue from where we stopped.